When I joined, I felt like a fish out of water. I was intimidated by the building, the way people spoke, the way they dressed. I felt like I needed to conform to be able to cope. But it wasn't until I went overseas on my first posting that I realised that my diversity, my difference, was a strength. I grew up in northwest London. My mother came over to the UK in the early 70s. She was thrown out of Uganda at gunpoint by Idi Amin's forces. And my father came from Kenya to the UK to study. I didn't know anything about diplomacy. I didn't know anything about the Foreign Office. Around my dinner table, we didn't really talk about working in the civil service. I genuinely think that my parents and my extended family thought this was a career for them, the white majority, not for people who looked like us. So it wasn't a discussion. You know, the thing that set in motion their departure was soldiers from Idi Amin's forces coming to their house, and it wasn't too long afterwards that I think Idi Amin made the announcement that he wanted to expel all Asians from the country. And for my mum, she arrived in the UK having never come here before. There were not many people that looked like her in that part of England at the time, and I think that was challenging. You know, racism in the 70s was pretty rife, not just against Asians, but more generally. But she was also humbled by the kind of humility of the people that she met, the people willing to give her help, and that respect for what the UK did, maybe the UK government did at the time to provide shelter to her and her family, I think has stayed with her.
What was it like to then be posted to the place your family had to leave?
Well, you get a list through of jobs that are coming up at a specific time, and Uganda was on there. And I spoke to her, and she'd always spoken really fondly about what the country was like, you know, setting aside the politics. And she was really keen for me to go right from the outset. But honestly, it was a real kind of lesson in the value of the diversity of our diplomatic service. I felt right from the outset that I was able to establish new relationships that were helpful to the High Commission. When I joined, I felt like a fish out of water. I was intimidated by the building, the artwork, the way people spoke, the way they dressed. I felt like I needed to conform to be able to cope. But it wasn't until I went overseas on my first posting that I realised that my diversity, my difference, was a strength. In Uganda, my main focus was on reporting on the humanitarian crisis that was taking place in the northern part of the country. By that stage, there'd been a couple of decades-long conflict between the Ugandan government and this large militia group called the Lord's Resistance Army that sort of based itself in northern Uganda, southern Sudan, in the DRC. It was infamous for taking children from villages and turning them into child soldiers. In fact, 60,000 child soldiers they managed to recruit and turn against their villages. And by this stage, 2004, 1.6 million Ugandans were in internally displaced camps. And when I went to see these camps for the first time, it was akin to some of the videos and images I'd seen from Ethiopia in the famine of 84 and 85. You know, it was a desperate situation. You know, I had a small opportunity to shine a spotlight on what was happening and to write and tell the story of the consequences of that particular conflict. Well, I was announced as the High Commissioner in Singapore in March 2024. Yeah, of course I'm biased as the High Commissioner to Singapore, but I think that Singapore is a hugely important partner for the UK. We have 6,000 British companies with a presence in Singapore. 40% of all UK trade with Southeast Asia goes through Singapore, and the Singaporeans have hundreds of billions of pounds worth of investment in the UK, and they want to do more. So I think domestic growth and jobs in the UK are going to come directly from building an even stronger trade and investment partnership with Singapore. I am struck by how popular UK culture is, UK arts and culture and sport are in Singapore. I am a unashamedly massive Liverpool fan. I mean, thankfully, Man United are less popular in Singapore than Liverpool are, but every single Saturday, huge numbers of Singaporeans tune in to watch Premier League football, and we have great collaborations between our museums. So all of that, I think, presents a brilliant backdrop to developing an even closer partnership with this crucial country. But it also has the most amazing food culture. And I think that no one speaks about Singapore without talking about the melting pot of Indian, Malay and Chinese food. But it is, I mean, the food is just amazing. And as a vegetarian, there is just so much variety, whether it's in the hawker stalls, hawker centres where you can get kind of cheap, quick street food, or it's fine dining. There's everything there. I mean, I think it's important for any of us who represent the country to understand its history. We can't wipe clean our history, but we need to develop an understanding of that and an understanding of how it's received in countries that we work in. In my case, Britain's history in Iraq, in Uganda, in Malaysia was really important to the way in which we then engaged as equals with those countries. My most recent overseas role before becoming High Commissioner to Singapore was as the Deputy Ambassador in South Korea from 2018 to 2022. If I fast forward to 2020, I remember us sitting in the embassy thinking about the COP26 summit, this milestone in the world's attempts to deal with climate change, and thinking about what we as an embassy might be able to do to both support Korea's ambitions on climate change, but also project a more global message. But it actually took one of our country-based members of staff to say, hang on, have you thought about doing something with a K-pop band? The K-pop band Blackpink was the most popular girl band in the world. And we thought, right, okay, this is the opportunity we've been waiting for. And thankfully, they were really keen, but wanted us to help script the video. So we recorded this video in a studio not dissimilar to the one that I'm sitting in at the moment, and we put the video out. And our ambition at that time, I think, was if we could get to 5,000 views, we'd be pretty happy. When we hit 5 million views in 24 hours, with hits from across the world, we knew that we were onto a kind of really, really serious campaign. That video, I think, was the most impactful bit of communications on climate change anywhere in the world, other than something that Greta Thunberg put out. I mean, it was that sort of impact. We hit, I think, 75 million views at that point across all our channels and their channels. I mean, I guess the big reflection I have on all of this is that modern diplomacy can be done in lots and lots of different ways. The days of shuffling paper and having conversations in dark, quiet rooms over a glass of whiskey, I think those days are gone. Diplomacy is about how we connect with people and issues. We need to make these jobs accessible, and we can only do that by removing the mystique or the veil that sits in front of them and actually making them more relatable and demonstrating that actually there's a really important role that we can all play in building the country's prosperity and security, and there's no better place to do that than out in the overseas network.